He won $314 million, and by the time it was gone, he wished he never bought the ticket. On Christmas Day 2002, Jack Whitaker cashed the largest single-ticket lottery jackpot in American history. He was already a millionaire, a successful contractor from West Virginia, a man who seemed immune to the traps that swallow ordinary lottery winners. He gave to charity, he built churches, and within 5 years, his marriage collapsed, his granddaughter was dead from a drug overdose, he had been robbed multiple times, sued more than 400 times, and the fortune that was supposed to change his life for the better had nearly vanished. Whitaker himself later said, "I wish I'd torn that ticket up." That single sentence sits at the center of one of the most misunderstood truths about money in America. Getting rich is not the hard part. Staying rich and staying sane while doing it is where almost everyone fails. And the reasons they fail are not random. They repeat, case after case, decade after decade, across every income level in this country. Consider Mike Tyson. By the time he retired from boxing, he had earned an estimated $400 million across his career. In 2003, he filed for bankruptcy, listing debts of roughly $23 million. The money didn't disappear because Tyson was uneducated about boxing. It disappeared because nobody ever taught him the first rule of wealth. Income is not the same as net worth. He spent as though the paychecks would never stop, on mansions, on a fleet of cars, on a pet Bengal tiger that reportedly cost $70,000 a year to maintain. Lifestyle inflation is the quiet killer of fortunes, and it does not care how much money enters the account. It only cares how much leaves it. Then there is the mistake that doesn't destroy the reckless, it destroys the loyal. In October 2001, Enron Corporation, once the 7th largest company in the United States, began to collapse under the weight of accounting fraud engineered by executives Kenneth Lay and Jeffrey Skilling. What made this story a tragedy for ordinary Americans wasn't just the fraud itself, it was that thousands of Enron employees had their retirement savings locked almost entirely in Enron stock. When the company's share price fell from over $90 to under $1 in a matter of months, workers didn't just lose their jobs, they lost their retirements because they had made the same mistake that ruins portfolios everywhere, putting everything into one basket and trusting that basket completely. Trust, misplaced in the wrong hands, built the largest Ponzi scheme in American history. Bernie Madoff ran a fraud for decades, promising investors steady, almost impossibly consistent returns. Nobody asked how a market that swung wildly every year could produce Madoff's smooth, unbroken profits. That silence, that unwillingness to question a good story, cost investors an estimated $65 billion when the scheme collapsed in December 2008. The lesson underneath the headlines was simple and brutal. If a return sounds too stable to be real, it usually is not real at all. And the people who lose the most are often the ones who trusted the hardest. The final mistake is the quietest, and it strikes people who never made a single headline. It's the mistake of leverage without a cushion, of buying a home, a car, or a business on debt calibrated for good times only. When the 2008 financial crisis hit, it wasn't just Wall Street banks that fell. Millions of American families who had stretched themselves into mortgages they could not sustain lost their homes within months, not because they were careless people, but because they had built their entire financial lives on the assumption that nothing would ever go wrong. Whitaker's fortune, Tyson's earnings, Enron's employees, Madoff's investors, and millions of over-leveraged families never had the same starting point, but they arrived at the same lesson from 5 different directions. Wealth is not destroyed by bad luck nearly as often as people believe. It is destroyed by decisions made in moments of overconfidence, blind trust, and denial. The 5 mistakes were different in shape, but identical in consequence. Spending with no limits, trusting concentration over diversification, believing in guarantees that don't exist in real markets, and building a life on debt with no room to fall. What connects every one of these stories is that the people involved had the money to succeed. What they lacked in the moment it mattered most was the discipline to protect it.